Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome. You have found us here on Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. It is Tuesday. It is 4 p.m. ET. I am your host, Hank Phillippi Ryan. So honored and so thrilled to be able to bring you a discussion with yet another marvelous author today. As I said, I'm Hank Phillippi Ryan, the USA Today bestselling author of 14 going on 15 novels of suspense. My newest book is The House Guest, which I have hanging on the door behind me as we do. And my new book, I can't wait to tell you, is coming out February 6th. It is called One Wrong Word. And we're all just playing with the cover of it now to see if I can match my face. It's so cool. Match my face with it. So it is Gossip, Greed, and Rumor. And that comes out on February 6th. And you will hear a lot about that when the time comes. But right now, the time has come to hear about There Should Have Been Eight with the fabulous Nalini Singh, who is coming to us from New Zealand, where it is springtime and already Wednesday. So I absolutely love that. This book just came out November the 21st, brand new. It is chilling. It is disturbing in the best of ways. You will just fly through the pages like I did, and I cannot wait for Nalini to tell you all about it. Sherry says, I love your new book, Hank. Thank you. You're going to distract me with that, you all. Thank you. Pamela Fry Priest is here and says, hi, Hank, Nalini, and everyone. Sherry says, excited for Nalini's new book. Shannon Hansen, hey, Shanson is here, says, hi, ladies. Sherry says, I'm jealous of your Yes, indeed, as it's getting to be winter here, wintry, rainy, snowy. There was a person on the last newscast that talked about being in Vermont where she couldn't see out the window because it was so snowy. So lucky you, Nalini. So let me tell you a little quick thing about what someone said, a reader now said about There Should Have Been Eight. She said, it's an intense locked room style mystery set in a partially burned out Gothic mansion in New Zealand during a storm that strands the cast with no contact with the outside world for the duration. We're talking, says this reviewer who loved it, we're talking secret panels and tunnels, mysterious attacks, people who disappear, and murder. And that is There Should Have Been Eight. What do you think when you read such an effusively complimentary review like that on a book that must have been so complicated to write?
Joy, of course, happiness. Like, I really want readers to enjoy the book. And so every time someone says that they did, I'm like, yay! I still do the happy dance. I think you agree with me, Hank, that no matter how many books you've written, if a reader is so happy and tells you, it's really joyful, and it hits the same no matter if it's book 1 or book 21. Yeah.
Isn't that so interesting that it hits the same? I think that's so well put, because every book is starting completely over and is brand new. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I think each book is its own creation. It doesn't matter what I've written before. For a reader going into a new book, that's a brand new world for them, and more so even in the thrillers, because they're all standalones. So it's each one is completely different from the other. With my series that I write, the series world is the same, but the people change and the characters change. So as an author, I can't rely that just because you liked my previous book, you're going to like this one. So that's what I mean. Each one, like you said, is a new thing, with a new tone to it, and the behavior of the characters is new. So yeah, it's definitely something, I think, fresh, I hope, for the readers each time, but in a good way.
Yes, I love that. Fresh and different for the readers every time, but in a good way. And also, though, for the author as well. It's a new experience for you as well. And I want to talk about that in a minute, because you've written several different genres of books. And this, your brand new one, There Should Have Been Eight, is a genre. I call it psychological suspense. Would you call it psychological suspense, or what would you call it?
Yeah. So I kind of didn't know what to call these books when I started. So some people have told me psychological suspense or psychological thrillers. Yeah, I think either one fits. I think they're not as much straight mysteries, because there is a lot of the psychological element of people's emotions and what's going on in their history and things like that. So yeah, I do think, psychological suspense or psychological thriller. Both work.
And this book is so much about motivation. That's certainly and how we deal with each other, how we can harm each other psychologically without, not with a weapon, but with the weapon that's just our emotions and our desires and what happens in our own minds.
Absolutely, because this is it's not a police procedural, so you haven't got someone who's not entwined in it, looking at it from above, trying to sort something out. It's people who are all very much entwined. Their emotions are so interlinked, and they've got this history behind them that is coloring everything. And so, yeah, it is very much about people and the things people do and the obsessions people have, and and the secrets they keep. So I really enjoy diving deep into the human psyche, and in the thrillers I get to go into the dark side.
Well, you definitely did, and There Should Have Been Eight. Such a foreboding title in the first place. Before we go, and I want you to remind me of all those things you said, because they were all just so incredibly perfect. But I would like to welcome you all to Crime Time. If you are new to Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze was started at the beginning of the pandemic, going into 4 years ago now, bizarrely, by the wonderful powerhouse team of Jenna Blum and Caroline Levitt to keep us as a reading and writing community, and introduce new authors, and to introduce readers to each other, and to keep us reading and keep us talking and keep us discovering new books like There Should Have Been Eight by Nalini Singh. And everybody is here today. Katie Crutchfield Waslin is saying the cover of the book really pops. And we'll talk about that in a minute. There's a lot of applause for the cover too. Let's talk a little bit about you, though, briefly. Let me read Nalini's formal bio. New York Times bestselling author Nalini Singh is passionate about writing. Though she's traveled as far afield as the deserts of China, the temples of Japan, and the frozen landscapes of Antarctica, it is the journey of the imagination that fascinates her most. She's back in New Zealand now, but always plotting new trips. She's the author of the Psy Changeling novels and also of the Guild Hunter series. So we'll talk about those, and 3 standalone thrillers. Her newest novel is, as I said, There Should Have Been Eight. I'm just looking for the publisher now, out from Berkeley, and it is indeed gorgeous, and you can get this right now, but not right now. Don't go right now. Wait till after the interview is over, because I know you won't be able to resist, and that lets me say that one of you will not have to click on anything or go to your bookstore to buy this book. One lucky winner will be given a copy of There Should Have Been Eight by way of Nalini and by way of Berkeley Books, and we are grateful for that. So let's talk about, so anyway, you know how to do it. You all leave a question, leave a comment, leave just general applause from Nalini. And Nisa is here, says hello from South Carolina. And she is indeed entered now, just because of that comment, to win There Should Have Been Eight. We will definitely talk about the cover, Vicki, but first tell us a little bit. Tell us just the story, the plot, the basic plot of the book, what it's about, and then we'll talk about what it's really about.
So the basic plot of the book is these 7 old friends so they were friends from high school. They were friends, at university. But originally there were 8 friends. And so now the 7 of them are getting together, and there is one other person who is the fiance of one of the 7. They decide to get together because they've sort of scattered all over the world, doing different things, and somehow they're all going to be in this one place at this one time, back home in New Zealand. So they're like, hey, let's have a reunion weekend. And one of the characters happens to have a family estate. It's out in the middle of nowhere in the Alpine region of New Zealand. And they decide, right, why don't we go there? I mean, it's free. We always wanted to see this estate. And it starts in the sunshine. And they're all arriving from different parts, and then they have this first glimpse of this mansion, which is it's half ruined on one side. It burned at some stage, and they never bothered to fix it because the other wing is still habitable, and most of the year there's only the caretaker there. And so now it begins. They get together, and it starts off as like there's so much sunshine, there's so much happiness, but it's all like a surface level gloss, because under it is the question of what happened to Beer, who is the 8th member of the original group. And and that's the through line that goes through the entire book, the history of what happened that actually split them apart. At one point, one of the characters says, we say we're friends, but we're really the ghosts of friends past. So they're kind of pretending, it's not what it was. They're trying to hold on to those memories, but they can't because something cataclysmic happened to sort of fracture everything. And yes, and then dark deeds happen.
Yes, indeed, they do. Why are reunions in old mansions never a good idea?
No, never go if you're invited.
Don't go. Something that none of us in prime time would go to those, right? We just like, no, we're not doing that.
No.
The idea of this closed mansion mystery, a locked mansion mystery, essentially, that a group of people bonded together from something are together in a situation that's very difficult and very impossible and desolate and inescapable. Why is that so much fun to write? Why did that lure you into writing that milieu?
So part of it, so all my mysteries, suspenses are set in New Zealand, and I feel like the New Zealand landscape is just so conducive to these kind of stories because there are parts of it that are so lonely and beautiful. And, in the sunshine, it is just dazzling. Like I have been to the place where the book is set and it's dazzling in the daytime. But then you think, what happens at night? There are no street lights, it's just tracks off into the mountains and snow-capped hills. And so the original idea came from the isolation of the location itself. And I thought, what would happen if something went wrong here? And then it just kind of grew from there. I didn't originally realize I was writing a locked room story. Like I didn't start to write that. It just kind of happened because I thought I was writing. I began with the reunion of these people. And it was only as I got deeper into it and I thought, I've actually just locked them here because, there's a storm and they are locked in. So there's nowhere to go. Like helicopters can't get through because of the winds. The bridge is basically almost washed out. So that's it. They're shut inside.
I love the process that your writer brain went through to wind up in that place that isn't where you started. So talk a bit about so you created this group. You knew you had 7 people. Did you know the title would be There Should Have Been 8? Did you know that?
No, it's really funny. I have to tell you the story of that title because so quite a few months before the book was due into my editor, she asked me, she said, we need to put something in, the catalogs that go out, so bookstores can order books and all of that kind of. She said, can you give me some kind of title? And I said, well, can we change it later because I'm still writing the book. I'm not quite sure. And she said, yeah, that's fine. And so I just was like, how about There Should Have Been 8? And it just was perfect. It just came in a moment. I didn't think about it. And it was just, that's how it ended up, that title.
What did your editor say though, when you just tossed that title off, which is obviously fabulous?
She loved it too. She said it has a very, very Agatha Christie-esque vibe to it. And at first I thought originally when I came up with, I thought, is it too simple? But then the more it grew on me, the more I read it, I was like, yeah, I really like this. It's perfect. It's perfect for the book because there's a faint sense of menace about it behind that really simple statement, and
certainly that something had gone wrong. Something was very wrong, and it should have been something else. And there's, now we know that there are 7 people. There should have been 8. That's really instantly scary and a story question right off the bat. But then going back to how you're writing it, do you just write your stories and see what happens next without knowing what the plot will actually be?
So it's a little bit different so when I write romances, I that's how I write it. I just go with it because my romances are in big series where there's an overarching plot line. And so I know the overarching plot line, and that's all I need to know to make sure each individual book stays on track. With the thrillers, I write them a bit different because I need to know the ending. I need to know the ending before I go through the middle, because I need to know where I'm taking readers. So, if it's a murder mystery, I would need to know who did it. And then once I know the ending, I just write. So I know the beginning and I know the ending. And those are the two things I need to know to keep myself from going off on tangents. Yeah.
So it's like taking an ocean liner from New York to London, and you know
Yeah.
where you're going, but you don't know what's going to happen along the way.
Exactly. And I love that. Like when I've years and years, like over, so this year is actually my 20th anniversary of my first book being published. And way back when I first started writing, I tried all the different ways writers write. And I thought, this plotting way that a lot of, writers do very successfully is they plot the whole book out and then they write the book and it's perfect. I thought that sounds much more sensible and I should do that. And I plotted out this whole book. And to this day, I have not written it because I got so bored. So for me, the process of discovery is part of the joy of writing. Thank you, Pamela. So I love discovering things along the way. So I sort of do a very skeletal, plot. Like I said, just so I know the major things, the beginning, the end, and anything particularly important that needs to happen. But other than that, how we take the journey is a surprise and it's fun. And every so often I write myself into a corner, but that's okay because it just means I have to work harder to get myself out.
I write exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Oh yes, absolutely. And sometimes I don't know the end, sadly, but I write exactly the same way. And I do think that there's that moment of when you think, oh no, I've written myself into a corner. What do I do? Oftentimes that's when you get a really good idea.
Yeah. Because I think I know for me, it makes me think harder to come up with a more creative solution that makes sense with what I've done. And I love that. I love sort of challenging myself. Okay, get yourself out of this now. Yeah.
Exactly. And also because your readers, and we're talking about Nalini Singh's There Should Have Been Eight with the world's most foreboding title, that your readers are smart and they're going to be trying to figure it out as well. And they're going to be trying to figure out what you would do. So you can't do that either.
No, yeah. I think as a writer, I have to trust my reader, right? That I think readers are so clever. Like with my long running series, I've had people who found a clue in book 2 that turned up in book 12. So people are so clever.
That you didn't put there at all.
Yeah, it was in there just kind of, as I'm writing, subconsciously, my brain just fed it in. And I trust the reader. I don't think you need to spoon feed anything. I think particularly in the suspense genre, because part of the fun is finding those hidden little things in the text that the author may or may not have put there on purpose. And just because I'm a huge reader in the genre as well, of course, and I love it when I get something, I'm like, oh, is this a clue? Is this a clue? Because it's a clue.
And sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. And sometimes the author has no idea about it. And then it turns out to be something later. You think, oh, that's why she had the dog, or oh, that's who was on the phone. I didn't. It's really funny. But what you were talking about, though, about the readers not having to be spoon-fed, I think that's an interesting juggle, because suspense is one thing, and this book is incredibly suspenseful, but confusion is another thing, and it is not confusing. So you need to make, there's that line that tightrope that you walk between telling just enough so the reader is comfortable and says, I wonder what's going to happen next, not what's going on. I'm confused. Do you know what I mean? It's different.
I think in one type of book, you do actually want some confusion, and which is when you have the unreliable narrator.
Yes.
And when the reader starts to realize that this person is actually unreliable, I think because that's a realization. Like you believe the narrator at the start because they are the narrator, that they're your point of view into the story. So in my second book, I had an unreliable narrator, and he had a brain injury, and you didn't actually know that he had this brain injury for a while because he's walking around with a broken leg as well. So you think, oh, it's his leg. His leg is injured. And then you're like, but why is he going to a neurologist if his leg is injured? And so I think you can work with a little bit of confusion, but not if you shut the reader out.
Yes.
So the reader has to be aware, okay, now we know something's going on. Like, can we trust everything he's telling us? Because he's not sure himself what he's telling us. So I think you have to include the reader in the confusion,
yes,
as opposed to shutting the reader out.
And maybe call it, instead of confusion, call it suspicion.
Yes,
that someone
suspicion.
Suspicion that someone is behaving in a way that the reader doesn't quite, I mean, something is wrong, but we still we still understand the story, but something is off. Yes. So speaking of, and you do that so gorgeously, I just clapped for you. And there should have been 8. And again, you set such a high bar of difficulty that you handle so gorgeously in this book, is that there's at least 7, 8 main characters, if not 9. And you differentiate among them perfectly. There is never any sense of confusion about who's who and where they are and what they're doing. How was that to write, Nalini, to keep all that straight and make it so easy for the reader to understand?
So I'm a very character-based writer.
Mm-hmm.
I love writing different kinds of characters, and I find it much easier to hold characters in my head if they are very diverse personalities, and very different in how they think. And I think of it as I write. So I've forgotten the word for it, but everybody thinks in a different way. Some are very visual, and some people are auditory, and some they write everything out. And with me, it's like a movie going on in my head, so it's very visual. And so all these people are people to me. And so in the same way I can keep my group of friends separated in my head, I can do it with my characters. And so I know exactly who is going to say what particular thing, because that's their character, that they would say that, whereas another character wouldn't. Like Kaya is much more playful, and he's the charmer, whereas Luna is the quiet one who watches everyone through her camera lens. And so you get all these people together, and it's just, it's like, for me, I mean, I don't talk to my characters, but I feel like I can hear them talk to each other, Yeah.
And we can hear that. We can hear them talking in the book as well. And again, though, from the standpoint of the reader just meeting each character for the first time in this novel, it's very easy for us to differentiate among each of the characters and keep the story straight. One of the characters in the novel is losing their sight. Can you talk a little bit about why you decided to do that, and as a story element and also as a metaphor?
So it's really interesting. So the first line of the book is, "But I'm afraid of the dark." Right? So that's how I began writing this book. And I thought, but why? Why is she afraid of the dark? And so that was a surprise. I didn't create the character with, she has a condition, a genetic condition. And that particular thing I wrote, like the character showed me in the book, like I wrote myself to that point. It's hard to say. Like, I didn't sketch out her whole character before I started writing. I knew who she was in the basics. I knew she was a photographer, and yet when we begin, she's in this really bad headspace, and I'm like, what's going on? Why is she so obsessed with taking as many photographs as she can? And it's because she's counting down, to this thing that's happening in her life that she hasn't told anybody about. It's this secret that's hovering in the background that she is dealing with. So that was really interesting. And once I started to get a clue of what was happening with her, I did a lot of research on various genetic eye conditions that could make this happen. So it's a real condition. And then I researched photographers who are blind, which I had never considered, for it. And there are some very successful blind photographers, which I found fascinating, because I wanted to have the entire pathway in my head for her, the entire journey that could be possible for her. But when we meet her, she's in the beginning, when she's had the shock of her life. And so I don't tend to consciously think of metaphors and things as I'm writing. I tend to think of them afterwards, after I've written it.
Sure.
And I look back and I think, oh yeah, this fits with, all of them are hiding, trying to be blind to something, and then she's physically, going blind. So yeah.
And that's exactly what I was going for. I thought you were so clever, when actually it's your mind working ahead of you. That's really very profound. Also, that when you can't see something, is it still there? Does it go away? Or if you pretend that you don't see it, it is still there, even though
yes,
you don't know if it's still there. And it worked so gorgeously in this book. The book is dark and foreboding and distressing and in all the wonderful things. And I say that as a huge, massive compliment. The story, the setting, this house, this mansion, is such a character in the novel. Is this a real place?
No, it's an amalgamation of various old buildings I scouted. So there's some really beautiful like old buildings in New Zealand, and I added a few turrets and things to it to make it even more foreboding, and then I burned half of it down. So
so you've never been, have you been in those kinds of homes to understand what the rooms are like and what the furnishings are like, and how, whether it's cold or warm, and what are the good rooms? Talk a little bit about this house, because it's so visual, it's so cinematic.
Yeah, I've been in a lot of these houses obviously are in Europe, particularly in like England, Wales, Scotland, places like that. These really grand sort of mansions that are almost castles but not quite. And I have been in a lot of them, and one of the things I noticed straight off the bat is how dark they are, because the windows were expensive, and I think at one point there was a window tax, so they actually boarded up a whole bunch of windows. And they're dark and they're narrow, and the stairs are actually death traps. Like I remember standing in one house going, how did the maids get up and down with the laundry and whatever, because there's no railings and they're like really thin treads, and they are cold. These houses are very cold, and in the olden times they would have been heated up with fires in the rooms. And I had all of that in the back of my head as I'm creating my sort of Gothic mansion, because it is it's very real. These places existed in this way, and I think the darkness that really struck me, that works really well in this story, because it is super dark. And
well, that's what I was just going to say. You see, all of you who are here today, here's Sherry Steuben and Randy and Renee is here, and Mary Garrett, welcome, are hearing the themes of darkness on so many levels coming into the story. And another element of darkness in the story is obsession and passion and guilt as motivations. Talk a little bit about, how you, in a psychological thriller, you have to think about how people think and what someone wants or wanted and how far they would go to get it or cover it up. Talk a little bit about the use of that kind of obsession and passion and guilt in writing this novel. I know, really, really carefully, but
yeah. So it's about digging really deep. So I think, we all have different faces, and I don't say that in a bad way, but say the way you interact with your children is not the same as the way you interact with your adult friends. It's not the same way you interact with your professional work colleagues. So we all have these faces that we wear for everyone. And in this kind of book, with a psychological thriller, you have to dig past all those faces to the real core behind it. Like someone could be smiling But if you know their history and you start to think, you're like, well, why are they smiling? Are they smiling because they're actually happy to see me? Or are they smiling because something is calculating in their back of their brain of something that happened 10 years ago that they're holding on to? You know, because people are so complex and we have so many pieces of us that we don't show everyone. So everyone sees a little piece, and with a book, like a suspense that's psychological, you have to dig in and show the reader all of the pieces, especially the dark and terrible pieces that no one wants to show the world.
Everyone has secrets. And I love that when
Yeah.
you're talking about the puzzle pieces, because there are 7 pieces and there should have been 8 pieces to make the puzzle be full. I love in your bio, and then we'll go to the questions in a second. The time is going by way too fast. I love in your bio that you talk about that you were delighted to be able to follow your dream as a writer. Have you always wanted to be a writer?
Yeah, I have from a very young age. And the hilarious thing is I did not know any writers, and I had no idea you could do it as like a job, as a career. I always thought, and yet I still wanted to be a writer. I got it into my head. I loved stories, and I was just an obsessive reader. And I thought, well, these writers come from somewhere. So, yeah. And then I actually submitted my first book when I was a teenager. So
What was it?
It was a romance, and she had a broken leg, and the title was "And a Broken Heart Too."
Oh,
So,
do you still have it?
I do still have it.
Aww.
I do, and it's like a printed manuscript because back then I was writing on my dad's computer, and it had the paper with the holes on the sides, yeah, and I had to ship it all in printed form. There was no sort of electronic sending to publishers kind of thing, so I had to save up all my summer job money to post this thing. But yeah, so I've always loved stories, and I've loved the idea of telling stories and having people enjoy the stories I tell. And so yeah, I just kept doing it until eventually someone wanted to read it.
And now everyone wants to read it. This is Nalini Singh's There Should Have Been 8. And I have to tell you that when I finished this novel, I closed the book and I just sat there for a minute. I just sat there letting the ending sink in, because congratulations on that. And more I cannot say. But highly, highly, highly recommend Nalini Singh's There Should Have Been 8. Gorgeous writing, sinister plot, deep motivation, wonderful characterization, and that fabulous, fabulous setting. Congratulations on that.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Let's take some questions. I know we have a lot. Love the cover. Yeah. I love to talk about this. Is the cover creation process different between your romance versus thrillers?
No, I don't think so. There is a slight difference. A lot of my romance covers have artwork. So there's an artist involved in that as well. So I can give very specific direction in terms of what the character looks like, because you want them to match, the character in the book. But the same designer has actually done, Rita Frangi has done the thriller design and the romance design. So in that sense, it's with her, when there's no artist involved with the thriller covers, but I'm still sort of trying to tell her, like, this is the tone of the book, and then she'll ask me what kind of elements. Like in this one, it was easy. I like a creepy house. We want a creepy house on it.
Creepy house.
Yeah. So, and then she just runs with it, and she's been doing my covers for such a long time. Doing the cover design, that I just really trust her. And if there's something I don't like, she's very open to me saying so, and then we. She'll do her magic and she'll come up with something amazing.
She did indeed. And I can tell you, while you were talking, I counted. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 slashes.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant.
There should have been 8. So isn't that great? That's wonderful. And Sherry, hi Sherry, is saying, is the New Zealand cover the same as the US cover?
Yes, for this book, yes, it is. the US did the cover first,
Mm.
and then normally New Zealand has the same cover as the UK. But the UK looked at the US cover and they said, "Oh, it's perfect." So so everyone decided to have the same cover. Yeah.
It almost glows. It is so attractive, and your chair matches it too. Did you do that on purpose?
No, this is my chair, and when I set up for this interview, I was like, "Wow, it looks like I matched my chair to the book."
I love it. I think the total picture. It's the total picture. Who has a couple more questions? Maybe two. What's your relation? Hi, Marissa. What's your relationship with your editor like? How vital is her role? Is it a woman in shaping your story?
Yeah, so my editor is Cindy Huang at Berkeley.
Oh.
And she has been my editor for, I think, something like 17 years. So we have a very strong working relationship. And she is that outside eye that can really see if there's a problem with the book. Or because by the time I finish writing the book, I'm so deep into it. Like, I don't know if you find this, Hank. Like, you can't see the wood for the trees because you've lived the story for months and months and months. And so Cindy's eye, being able to look at it critically and tell me if there are any holes in it, or if one character isn't as strong as the other characters, it's really important. So she really helps make sure the story is the best it can be, to provide, for me to fill in those gaps, do revisions where needed. And I really respect that. And I think a good editor can just take a book to the next level. Yeah, and I think she does that for me.
Cindy is an icon. She is just a well-known rock star, and actually turned down my first novel. I remember that moment when I got the letter. So please give her a hug for me. She was totally right to do it. I admire her so much. But when you said her name, I thought, oh yeah, I know her. She is quite amazing. And it is interesting. I love my editor too, and she'll say things like, don't forget to put about the part about, I don't know, don't forget to put about redemption. And I'll think, yeah, redemption. It's about redemption. And I say to her, you're such a genius. How did you know that? And she says, you put it there. I just saw it. It was already there. And that's the thing that I think just gives me goosebumps about a fabulous editor like Cindy and like mine, where they see not only the little things, but the big picture spirit and essence of your book. If we had just noticed it ourselves.
Yeah. And I think it's there's all that experience behind, their knowledge as well, their ability to see the beats in a story, and they can tell if a beat is missing because they're so immersed in storytelling and have read so many different authors. So I think a good editor doesn't change the story; they make it better. They make it more us.
Yes.
By helping us just refine the things that we maybe cannot see because we're too close to it. Yeah.
We're very lucky to have wonderful editors. It makes a massive difference. One last question. Do we have one more question? Two-part. Okay, here we go, Margaret. You're a new author and I love thrillers. Which book besides this one would you well, how this one, certainly Sherry. And you've written several other genres as well. What other books would you recommend? And Randy says, I don't know if I should start with her series or standalone. Randy from Barnes and Noble.
Okay, so I think it depends. If you like, if you like thrillers, then I've got these three that are behind me. So you can start with Quiet Inner Bones, which is the one with the unreliable narrator, or you can read A Madness of Sunshine, also, which was my very first thriller and has a very fine thread of romance in it because that's just the way that particular story worked out, and the other two are straight, thriller, suspense. If you want to try the romances, that also depends on how romancy you want it. Like, do you want some fantasy or urban fantasy in there, some paranormal stuff? So here's my starters, which I always tell people, if you want dark and really intense, go with Angel's Blood, which there's a lot of blood in that one, a lot of dark, terrible things, but it's beautiful as well. It's got archangels and vampires and all kinds of things. And then Slave to Sensation is actually the book that really was the breakout book of my career. And it's shapeshifters, but it's set in a world of telepaths who condition emotion out of themselves. So they're very cold and dark. So those are sort of starter romance dives. And I have also written contemporary romances. So Rock Hard is a really popular one. Honestly, go to my website. I've got excerpts for everything, nalinisingh.com. I try and put lots of material on there so you can have a read and see, hey, yeah, I like this style, I like this type of story. Because I know when an author has a really big backlist, sometimes you're like, where do I even start?
Well, that's why I was going to shepherd you all to Nalini's website, nalinisingh.com, which is put up on our banner right now. Go to that website, nalinisingh.com, and you can just shop around and see what strikes your fancy. But her brand new book is There Should Have Been Eight, which is out right now and available with this gorgeous, provocative, dark cover. And I know you will enjoy this. Let's spin the wheel of fun and see who will not have to go buy this book or click, who is going to get a copy from Berkeley and from Nalini herself. We will see who the winner is, and that is, oh, the suspense. Robin Stull. Hooray. I love that. Robin, what a wonderful stalwart crime time winner. And I know that you will love this novel. Nalini, congratulations on this. It's being so well received. Is it fun? Do you have pub day fun and rituals that you do?
I usually just go out for lunch with the family or with my friends, and just sometimes I just take the day off and do whatever I want, And every so often I do very old school. I order a tray of, they're literally called bonbons, like handmade chocolates. And I just eat these bonbons like, Barbara Cartland and
That's wonderful. I think that is absolutely great. And devoutly to be wished, we're all going to get bonbons for ourselves on Pub Day. It sounds absolutely great. Again, Robin, you're the winner. Please email me and we will get you connected with our producer, Margaret, who will connect with the publisher, who will connect with Nalini, who will get you a book. And that is how publishing works. And congratulations, Robin, on your lucky winner. The rest of you, Margaret in the back room was saying, tray of bonbons. Yes. The rest of you hop right over to Nalini Singh's website and see where you can find near you a copy of There Should Have Been Eight. But clear your calendars because you will not be able to put it down. Nalini, thank you for coming. Happy Wednesday.
Thank you so much for having me, Hank.
We can't wait to have it.
Fun.
Fun for me too, as well. And marvelous that all of you came. When I look over here, I'm looking at the comments. All of you who came, it's wonderful. Next week, we will be here with Look Who, Kaz Freer, with 5 Bad Deeds. It says on the back cover, the main character, Ellen Walsh, gets a note. And the note says, people have to learn there are consequences, Ellen. I'm going to teach you that lesson right under your nose. Nice. Ooh. Next week here on Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze at 4 p.m. ET on Tuesday. Hear from Kaz Freer about 5 Bad Deeds. And notice the house on the front of that, another creepy house. All right, that's good. I see the theme. All of you, thank you so much for coming to Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. I absolutely love it that you are here every Tuesday. You are the joy of my life. Until next Tuesday, remember, it is always safe inside a book. And we'll see you next time.